And a good Tuesday morning to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Overall, not much change between yesterday and today for what we're looking at here back at home. But a couple things we have to touch on in terms of this potential tropical disturbance, which we'll get into in just a little bit. First things first, let's talk about the numbers. 97 degrees. I wish it was 70 for a high yesterday. 97 was the high, so that's 3 degrees above average for this time of year. The second day in a row that we've crawled above average. We were 96 the day before, and actually fairly close to this record. Back in 1977 of 101, we only fell 4 degrees shy of that, but still have yet to reach that triple-digit mark for high temperatures so far in the year of 2025. No rain once again at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, so our year departure has fallen below 3 inches, but we are still hovering a good amount above where we should be this time of year. Not necessarily needing any rain whatsoever. We're not in any kind of dry conditions, not in any form of a drought whatsoever, but that number does continue to tick down, and very thankfully we got a really good cushion before we entered this dry stretch for the beginning of the month of July. Sunrise yesterday, 6:37, and sunset was at 8:44. We'll see how that sunrise today compares to yesterday's. So for the month of July so far, we have recorded rain on 4 separate occasions. In fact, 3 days in a row from the 9th all the way to the 11th that you can see some rain recorded, but all of those days we recorded less than 1/10 of an inch of rain. It didn't really do much in terms of putting us to where we should be compared to average. So as we're really reaching that halfway point of July now, as of July 14th, which was yesterday, you can see we're hovering very dry, getting into the exceptionally dry category for the month of July itself, only recording about 2/10 of rain when you add all those numbers up. Average July, we typically see near 5 inches of rain on average, and the record, of course, 18 inches back during the flood of '94. But we still have a good month and a good chunk of July to go, and we know that maybe 1 or 2 days where we get some heavy rainfall over Middle Georgia Regional Airport is all it will take in order to get some of those numbers back closer to average. So your headlines, flirting with heat advisories. I say flirting with that even if the feels like temperatures are going to be into heat advisory criteria. We'll go over why we're not necessarily seeing one of those today, even if the feels like temperatures are going to be very similar to yesterday. Rain chances will still be present each and every day as the hot and humid air mass does stay in place over the southeast. And the pattern will exist really for the next week. It's a very typical July 7-day forecast. And just like yesterday, we're starting it out with lots and lots of blue sky all across the quad view of the sky cams. And you can see maybe some thin high-level cloud cover in areas like the Georgia National Fairgrounds. Any of that cloud cover isn't blocking any sunshine, really playing no role in our forecast whatsoever. So a predominantly sunny afternoon, and we see these temperatures that are continuing to increase into the low and mid 80s. Here as we approach the 11 a.m. hour. At the warmest, I think I see 86 in Vidalia. Everyone else hovering just a tick 2 or 3 below that threshold. So let's talk about our current temperatures across the southeast. And number one, you can see the circulation down here as you move into the state of Florida and some rain-cooled air around the Orlando area, hovering somewhere in the mid-70s as opposed to its neighbors. Jacksonville at 85, 89 degrees in Panama City. And I think that's the warmest temperature that we do see here in the eastern half of the United States. But the deep south and the southeast virtually running the same for the numbers. 84 in Macon, 86 in Montgomery, and an 84 over in Jackson, Mississippi. Dew point temperatures still very, very muggy. Lots of dark green that is continuing to be shaded farther over to the east here in central Georgia and down in our south and our southwest. Those are going to be your lower areas on the topography scale. And of course, the lower you are, you're closer to some watersheds, some tributaries of the rivers and lakes that we have present in our area. So there is going to be more moisture at that surface, maybe only a degree or 2 influence with those dew point temperatures, but those areas where you see the dark green does correlate to some darker shades on the feels like temperature map. So let's take a look at those current numbers. These heat indices at the warmest, 99 degrees is what it feels like in Gordon. Gordon typically has been running a triple-digit mark as we've been talking about this on the stream, so not quite seeing any feels like numbers of 100 degrees just yet. In fact, feeling pretty cool down in Dodge County. 87 degrees is what it feels like in Eastman. Everyone else looks to be at least at the 90-degree mark, maybe even into the upper 90s. Feels like 98 in Unadilla, 96 over in Taylor County and Butler, and then plenty of low to mid 90s farther east that you travel. A 96 down in McRae, so showing you that this isolated area of some orange color as opposed to red is mainly secluded to Dodge County, the southern tip of Lawrence. Can stretch into portions of Telfair County, but McRae is definitely feeling the heat already. The winds in the wind gust map. This will become more of a story over the next couple of days because we are looking at some breezier conditions to settle in, courtesy of this potential tropical system to the south. But right now, we just kind of see an easterly breeze going about 3 to 6, maybe even 7 miles per hour. These are your sustained winds, not going to be your occasional gusts. We'll get into what we're expecting with that here on this graphic, because you can see the easterly wind depicted about 10 to 20 miles per hour at times throughout this afternoon. Today should mark the first of a series of breezy days as we head throughout the midweek into the end of the work week. We're staying hot today, and afternoon rain chances will still pop up in the picture once temperatures reach their warmest, pairing it up with that humidity, and rain will come in the form of scattered showers and even some thunderstorms. 95 degrees for a high temperature, so really it does not look that bad on paper on the today graphic. Temperatures hovering right around average, maybe just a degree or two above. Not quite into the upper 90s like we saw yesterday. However, when you pair it up with the humidity, the heat index map, it just continues to increase. Somewhere in the low to mid 100s during the peak of today, but it does look like this graphic is picking up at least on some showers as we go into the late afternoon and evening hours, feeling like 100, 99, 98 as we go through 5 to 7 p.m., which is a little bit better than yesterday. Yesterday, we had these triple-digit heat indices from noon all the way until about 8 p.m., so they were going to be a little longer lasting. It does look like they're picking up on at least a scattered shower to cool those temperatures down just a touch here in central Georgia. So let's go into your heat advisory or heat alerts graphic, and we're not seeing anything here in central Georgia. We still have the potential for feels like numbers up to 108, and that threshold is normally 105 degrees, pretty widespread for a heat advisory to get issued. But because of some cloud cover and some rain chances in the forecast today, not really forecasting the long-lasting impacts like we saw yesterday with these heat indices. It should be fairly short-lived, but a select few areas are more than likely going to dodge the rain, and you will get some numbers that can get into the upper 100s later this afternoon. So let's talk about the satellite and radar. Okay, there you go. That's about it. That's all we need to talk about. Can't even find much in the way of cloud cover right now. Pretty much crystal clear after or late morning hours as we head into the afternoon. And going into this afternoon, we'll talk about future view first and foremost before we get into the tropics talk. But right now, scattered showers bubbling up as early as about 2 to 3 p.m. And you can see it's pretty parallel with the I-85 corridor to the west and northwest of us. So that's where your rain chances are going to be a little bit greater the farther northwest you live in central Georgia today. Scattered showers, a few storms could be present. Looks like there's plenty more rain to the north of us near the metro Atlanta area as opposed to back here at home. We go into 6 p.m. where scattered rain is still popping up in the picture. Doesn't look too intense, but still going to be our fair share of scattered showers. I wouldn't even rule out a couple of storms, even though Future View isn't really buying into that. And that will continue into the evening and nighttime hours before we go into the overnight hours. Not quite sure that this will be present by the midnight hour. We typically see an earlier weakening trend with some of these rain chances than what Future View seems to hold on to. But now let's go into your Wednesday afternoon. And Wednesday's a little bit iffy. Number one, notice the breeze coming out of the south and the southeast. It's not necessarily too gusty, but this is also going to continue to propel any moisture from down to the south all the way up into our neck of the woods. So there's plenty of scattered showers and some storms to the south and southwest of us. A lot present up in the state of South Carolina. But central Georgia, it seems like we're kind of left out of the fun, not getting anything in the way of rain throughout Wednesday until maybe we get into the nighttime hours. But notice the weakening trend with this. It virtually disappears as we head past sunset into the overnight hours. Now we go into Thursday. Scattered showers still are going to remain present. It does look mainly over to the west of us, seeing a predominantly southerly breeze now into your Thursday afternoon. And then still a couple of storms could hang on into the late evening and the nighttime hours. But overall, it doesn't look like anything very substantial and very widespread in the way of rain chances. Probably a better likelihood that you are going to remain dry as opposed to receiving anything in the way of rainfall. And it's probably not going to help our average too much, maybe bump that number back up above 3 inches above average here at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. So now let's talk some tropics. Let's get into your satellite and radar picture where we go down to the south in Florida. You can see this cluster of showers and storms pushing over along the Atlantic coast into the Orlando area, kind of in central Florida. This area right here, we were picking up on a good amount of spin earlier this morning, and now we are seeing this move over land. So it is going to disorganize, probably disrupt the flow just a tad. But this is the potential area of development that we are watching down to the south. It's finally moving onshore over to the west here in central Florida. So let's take a look at the latest update in your tropics outlook. This is as of the 8 a.m. update on Tuesday morning. Better chances than what we saw yesterday. Now kind of moderate chances of development. 40% chance of developing over the next 48 hours and then a 40% chance over the next 7 days, but that's really just covering it past that 2-day window. So that orange X that you do see, that's that cluster of showers and storms moving onshore across Florida. This area is forecasted to continue to move westward into the northern Gulf, and you can see that this shaded area encompasses a good chunk of the northern Gulf. So the consensus is, and all the models that we are showing, and we'll show you that in just 1 second, is continuing to push this cluster back into the northern Gulf where there is plenty of warm sea surface temperatures in this sector of the Gulf. So right now we are going to continue to watch this westerly path, but where it moves onshore is still a little bit uncertain. Is it going to move onshore in the coastal areas of Louisiana, up into Mississippi, or is it going to kind of take a little bit of a northerly path? Is it going to creep closer to us in the state of Georgia? Right now it still remains to be seen, but it does look like the chances are growing for this to be our 4th named storm of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, which would be Dexter. We had Tropical Storm Chantal crossed off about 2 weeks ago over the 4th of July weekend. Tropical Storm Barry, which moved over eastern Mexico. Eventually all that moisture led to the flooding that happened in central Texas. And Tropical Storm Andrea, which was the first storm of the 2025 hurricane season. That formed in the northern Pacific, had a lifespan of about 12 to 24 hours, and then was very quick to dissipate in those cooler waters up on higher latitudes. So let's go over the wind gusts. This is probably the main implication that we're looking at associated with this tropical system here in central Georgia. You can see about 10 a.m. on Tuesday going into the afternoon and evening hours. There are some gustier winds closer to the coast here in the state of Georgia, but some isolated gusts up to 20, maybe 25 miles per hour could be present in some areas in central Georgia. Now we go into Wednesday afternoon where we're still seeing some patchy areas of that yellow shade, which is going to indicate some gustier winds up to 25 miles per hour. That's going to continue to be possible on Wednesday. And then we go into Thursday where that same possibility exists. But most of that yellow shade will be found to the west and the southwest of us as the system does continue its western track just down to the south of all of the southeastern states. So what you can expect is just going to be an above average, maybe just a tad bit breezier than normal afternoon for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then the future view graphic goes all the way out to Friday at 10 a.m. Each morning we're going to kind of hit a little bit of a lull in terms of those winds. But how about the rainfall totals? Those are going to be very isolated to some totals that get up to about 1 to 2, maybe even 3 inches. And most of those will be found along the Gulf Coast of Florida, getting into Alabama, Mississippi, and portions of the Mississippi River Delta. Not forecasting insane totals. This is going all the way out to next Tuesday of next week. But back here you can see we kind of find ourselves in a patchy area of green in central Georgia where we're only recording maybe about 1/10 or 2/10 of an inch. Some isolated areas that might get up to an inch, but not really improving our rain chances. That's going to be farther down to the south and the southwest of us. So let's take a look at the spaghetti plot according to the GFS model right here, that same model that we were just showing you for the rainfall graphic. This center of low pressure going to move west across the panhandle of Florida, and then it's going to kind of fluctuate, not necessarily a direct westerly path. It could wobble a little bit, go farther up to the north. And the farther north that center of circulation goes as it's passing directly south of the state of Georgia, that would push a little bit more moisture into our neck of the woods. However, it does look like it's going to maybe move back down towards the south and the southwest, and then eventually move onshore, maybe as far west as the western coast of Louisiana, getting over into areas of Texas. But you can see all these spaghetti plots, they kind of start to spread out a little bit more. I mean, they are pretty widespread for the entirety of this path, but they are definitely varying a good amount as we get into the next couple of days, as you get farther out into the future, more so this weekend. But it does look like a good consensus that this tropical system will move onshore in coastal areas of Louisiana, maybe Mississippi, maybe even as far west over into Texas. But if we are to see a fluctuation with that path, it moves onshore a little bit closer to home, then of course it would increase the rain chances and we would have some slightly gustier winds, but still not looking at any major impacts associated with this tropical system. So over the next 3 days, our forecast kind of remains unchanged, mid-90s for highs that of course will feel like the triple digits and a couple degrees above that. 30% chance of a shower or a storm each and every day from Tuesday into Wednesday and into Thursday. And this could be a little bit of a half and half. It could be courtesy of some tropical moisture, and it also could be courtesy of our hot and humid air mass that will continue to produce those diurnally driven showers and storms each and every afternoon, but a better likelihood that you do remain dry as opposed to receiving some rain. Now let's get into your afternoon high temperatures. Not much variation past the next 3 days, still hovering right around average, maybe a degree warmer. Highs in 94 and 95 all the way from Tuesday into Saturday. But of course you want to know how it feels outside. And when we see the humidity levels that are still hanging out in the humid range and the very muggy range, not only is that going to increase our rain chances, it's also going to lead to feels like numbers that are slightly higher than the actual temperatures. So not much fluctuation, maybe a steady downtick over the next couple of days. I'm not really sure I'm buying that because number one, our humidity likes to hover a little bit above what this humidity muggy meter does say. But as we head into the beginning of the weekend, still looking at a steady downtick, and I do believe some tropical moisture will be present in some patches, and that's of course going to be some pretty humid air associated by whatever does form. So future view feels like temperatures still kind of a dividing line between the red and the pink colors here in central Georgia. About a feels like number of 103 later on this afternoon in Macon. Whether you're in the upper 90s, the low 100s, it's still virtually all going to feel the same. And just because we don't have a heat advisory present today doesn't mean it's not going to be just as hot. This will be present each and every day. You'll of course still see your faint areas of pink as we go into Wednesday afternoon. Only looks like we're topping out in the upper 90s, but some isolated areas are definitely going to feel a little bit warmer than that. Let's go all the way to Thursday and still not able to shake this heat. Somewhere in the upper 90s, our neighbors down to the south in Valdosta feels like 100, but you can see where the rain-cooled air is present, and that could even eclipse areas like Albany down to our southwest, feels like 80 degrees. So getting an uptick in the rain chances would not necessarily be a bad thing. That's what could be in store for your feels like numbers if we are to get a pretty good cluster of some showers that kind of sit over the same area in the heavier rainfall that you do get. Of course, it's associated with thunderstorms, but it really does substantially cool some of those numbers down. But it looks like the better chances of seeing that rain-cooled air will be along the Gulf Coast and in southern portions of Alabama, southwest Georgia, and getting into southern Mississippi and eastern Louisiana. So now let's go into your long-range models. Let's kind of take it back a little bit. Let's see what the long-range models are having to say about the midweek first and foremost. Lots and lots of moisture down to the south and southwest of us. A good amount of agreement that there is going to be at least widespread showers over in coastal areas of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. This cluster just continues to be very widespread in the northern Gulf. Lots of rain along this portion of the Gulf. And we will continue to see this cluster move onshore somewhere over here to the west of us. But back here in central Georgia, it doesn't quite look like we have a really big influx of some moisture. It still looks like maybe we'll get a couple outer bands and a couple of scattered showers and some storms, but overall, it's not really drastically increasing our rain chances, and that's why your 7-day forecast is going to remain pretty consistent over the next couple of days. We take future view out all the way to Saturday at 5 p.m., and then once this moves onshore, everything is kind of up in the air by the time we get into the end of the weekend. There's a system definitely up to the north and northeast of us. Plenty of rain behind the banner up here into portions of the mid-Atlantic and the New England area. But back here at home, the rain chances still looking pretty hard to come by, and it looks like we are going to remain mostly dry, but with the exception of a scattered shower or storm each and every day. And we go all the way out to Tuesday afternoon, where still some patchy areas of green and blue are present, but nothing definitive in the way of rain chances. It still just looks like your typical run-of-the-mill pop-up showers and thunderstorms in light of that warm and that muggy air mass that we still have. Remember, when we get that surface heating, warm air rises, cooler air sinks, so when you heat up the surface, it's going to contribute to a lot of rising motion. And what is that going to lift? All the moisture that we have at the surface. So that can contribute to our fair share of rain chances. But overall, this week does look a lot drier than what we had present last week. We actually had a couple days where the rain chances were pretty widespread. Widespread thunderstorms, widespread showers at the very least. And it did contribute to a lot of rain-cooled air. And even if we did have some triple-digit heat indices, they were very short-lived. It looks like most afternoons you're going to be dealing with the brunt of the heat because it's still going to be very, very hot and muggy, but not as much in the way of rain to provide for some relief in the way of rain-cooled temperatures. So right now, 7-day forecast, mid-90s each and every day, a little bit of an uptick as we head into next week. You see highs of 96 on Sunday and Monday. A 30% chance of a shower or storm each and every day. And the main thing I want to emphasize with that, in terms of the specific number that you have, there's a greater chance of you remaining dry as opposed to receiving some rain. 30% chance of a shower or storm means a 70% chance of remaining dry. But we could see some fluctuation with this, and the greater our rain chances get would not be a bad thing whatsoever on your 7-day forecast, because it would bump these high temperatures down just a touch. And of course, it would result in some more feels-like numbers, at least somewhere in the 90s, where you're not getting blistering hot around the triple digits, 105, even up to 108 like we have for the guidance today. But it does look like the showers and maybe some cloud cover later on this afternoon could make the heat indices pretty short-lived, and the really, really hot stuff is going to be isolated to just some local areas, maybe just those areas in east central Georgia that are a little more humid than the rest of the bunch, or maybe some areas down in the south and southwest of central Georgia, a little bit more humid than the rest of everyone else. It's all going to be dependent on your actual temperature and your humidity levels for what you do feel like this afternoon, but you should still plan on a predominantly hot afternoon, especially if you don't get any rain. Make sure you're hydrating all afternoon long, whether that's electrolytes, whether that's your body or bottle of water or a body armor. That's what I was trying to get on my mouth right there. And then make sure you're taking care of yourself as well. You don't want to spend too much time outside in this blistering heat. It can lead to not only dehydration, but heat-related illnesses as well. So take those breaks in the shade where it is cooler. Take those breaks inside in the air conditioning. And if you do have to spend an extended period of time outside, I know many construction workers, many folks just working out and about, roofers, landscapers, of course, you're spending most of the afternoon outside. Try to wear long sleeves if you can. Try to just block most of the sunshine that you can get. But of course, make sure to apply and reapply that sunscreen. Make sure you're not running the risk of getting sunburnt, because the UV index is going to be through the roof just about each and every one of these days for the next week ahead. But also don't forget the umbrella or the rain jacket each afternoon and evening, especially if you have any dinner plans. It's still in the thick of summertime, so of course maybe many of you trying to get off work, go hit the pool, go socialize and have fun with some family and friends. Don't forget that umbrella when heading outside later on this evening, because we will still have the chance of holding on to some scattered showers and some thunderstorms. And like we saw yesterday, you can get a very isolated strong thunderstorm. We were seeing a couple of what just looked like blips on the radar, but they were packing a punch with some heavy rainfall rates. That's going to be the main thing with any thunderstorms today. Going to be very localized impacts, but the rainfall rates are going to be very heavy, and we'll have to look out for the ponding of low-lying areas and maybe even some isolated flash flood warnings. But we haven't seen that come to fruition too much as of recently. If it has, it's mainly been north of us. But of course, if we do get any warnings that you need to know about, you will be the first to know here with our updates that we get on the weather team. So that will do it for a look at your extended forecast. Hope that was a good in-depth breakdown of what's going on tropical-wise, and really just showing you that it's not posing any impacts to us right now besides a fairly breezy Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. By the time we head into the weekend, most of that wind field should move far away west enough from us to where we're not really feeling the impacts. But a nice breeze during the summertime is never a bad thing to complain about, so we'll take what we can get. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here at 10:30 once again tomorrow.